training that they're providing for participants. They're going to have sign-in sheet where there's going to be a self-declaration checkbox for each day of the training, right? So, check it. And that's good enough for us. I mean, and that's sufficient. And so just make sure that language is in there, and it's and you run that by when you're meeting with your grantees. Quality assurance in case of staff illness. Who's going to be responsible for ensuring that contract services will continue? And they basically need to primarily identify who that's going to be. So when you're walking them through like the draft, they're going to go, oh, it's not going to be the executive director, it's going to be the program director, right? So whoever has program director title is the person who's going to be responsible. My thing is I prefer it being the executive director because a lot of times the people at the bottom change, right? So I'd rather have that consistency, and I would just tell them it should be the executive director. Or the executive administrator should be the person who you can go back to and say, hey, you know what? You guys fired your program manager, and now you guys are telling me that you cannot continue these classes because you need the program manager. I go straight to the executive director. Nuh-uh. You guys need to continue these classes. I don't care who you got to pull out of wherever, but until you hire somebody, you cannot delay services on this contract, and you signed our quality assurance plan, or you signed off on our contract. And so these 1-year contracts, you can't have delays, because if you do, it's like, I mean, 2-year contracts you might be able to, but the 1-year contracts, if they do a delay by like 2 or 3 weeks, you're done. I mean, really, it's going to be hard to catch up and meet those outputs and outcomes, right? And so, very clean language. You don't have to put job description. You don't have to put what they're, who they are. But I would put in basically all of the contracts. It's going to be the executive director or whoever is one of those higher tier people. Make them responsible, right? But if they tell you it's going, it's not going to be executive director, it's like, okay, but I mean, it should be the executive director. It should be the top person in your organization that I can go to and say, no, you need to get somebody and put somebody in place here. And then the grant monitoring and contract compliance language is basic, right? All our reporting requirements, all basic stuff that we have in there. All our monitoring is basic. All the notices, just make sure you have the name of the person who's signing off on the contract in there. And then your report schedule, right? So for the Ohana grants, the good news is all your Ohana grants, you're going to use exactly the same report schedule, right? All the COVID grants, you're going to use the same report schedule. All your contracts are going to begin and end at the same time. So this one, once you do your first contract, you're just going to be using the same report schedule for all of those contracts across the board. We did have questions. I know some of you have grantees who are super excited about starting earlier, right? And so, but because we need to have start and end dates, and when you start managing and monitoring your contracts, you're going to really understand why you want all your start and end dates the same, because you want to make sure your quarterly reports coming in at the same time. It gives you that ability to complete all your grant assessments, and then it gives you the ability to manage your grants on a timetable. So I really would love to allow grantees to start earlier, but we're primarily doing this for us. It's a very structured way of grants management for us and grants monitoring to have all contracts started and at the same time. If you have outliers, it's going to start getting difficult to you. If you have one grant here that starts and ends here, right? But if you are working and managing grants and everything is due here, I'm doing my grant assessments, here's all of my closeouts, except for a couple of grants that I gave performance extensions to. Um, it's just good grants practice to really have consistent and structured management of grants, and that's why we're not going to let some of your grantees start earlier. I know they want to get out the gate and get out the door, but for you to manage, and for me too as a grants manager who has to review, I know that all of these quarterly reports are due here. I know that I have these time frames where I'm reviewing all the grant assessments, and then there's a downtime where you're doing other things and doing other management things, right? And so this structure is primarily created for us. It's just good grants practice, right? So sorry, no kids start early. They gotta go. Those guys who wanted to start earlier than October 1st, they just gotta wait, right? Yeah. And so, and then as we roll through here, the next, and the good thing for you is your time of performance. So if you're working on your Ohana grant, your time of performance is going to be exactly the same. So, you're just going to, what I would do is like, Angela, when we work on your first full template, and Valzy, for Ohana grants. Once you complete your first template, then I would reuse that finished template for all my Ohana grants, right? So all you have to do is change the scope, the amount, the name of the organization, but your this attachment, the report schedule, all of that other stuff will be the same in those contracts. And then let's see what's next. I think the rest is basically compensation. Only the names and the amounts are going to change, and your initial payments, cash match funds. All our grants except EB Kupuna and COVID have cash match, so this provision has to be in all of the other grants that we're managing. And let's see, blub. And here we come. And so we did tweak out the performance measurement table. This is actually the new one.
Cool.
That we actually finalized again this week with evaluation team. We've been working really, it's been wonderful and collaborative actually working with Carla and Kristen, and I think we've come to some agreement and understanding. So I do apologize, but I'm going to tell you this. Should I say it, Mickey, that this is the final? It's not going to change again. I think we've just... yeah. No, I don't think it's not... Okay. It's not going to change again. I think we have just... the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of meetings. It's been real positive. I really, really like what I see. I mean, I'm super excited about our PMTs now. It looks way better than before. I mean, it's really good. And so this is the new PMT template that we're using. There in the contracting team site, there's the template. This is the same one, right? So what we did is we kind of went back and forth because we're like newly enrolled, newly served, newly enrolled. And the last time you guys saw the template, it was like newly enrolled. So what we decided to use was newly served, right? And and we'll go through the definition of what that means. So remember, at the top of every PMT, because we want consistency, the top, the top, where if you have non-Hawaiian participants, you're always going to have number 1. Of course, you're going to have Hawaiian participants, so you're always going to have number 2, right? Again, if you have non-Hawaiians, you're always going to have number 3, and you're always going to have number 4, right? If you only have Hawaiians, you're going to have number 2 and 4, right? These are always going to be at the top, right? So what we did is we wanted to show number 5, total number of individuals who actually completed the project. And don't worry about all the definitions, we'll walk through all that. what we did, and then we have total number of Hawaiians who completed the project, right? And like I said, if there's no non-Hawaiians, you just take out 1, 3, and 5. But this should always be at the top. And what we decided to do is, remember we went through last time that we were going to have you add up all those deliverables, and we have the total number of deliverables. Well, and it just seemed like a bit much because everybody can add. And so what we're doing is just, we took that out because it's just too much. And so what you're doing is for every deliverable that you have, you just have deliverable A, B, C, D, E, and F, and G.
Okay.
Some of your grants only have deliverable A and B, right? This EV Kupuna one, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot that they have committed to. So when you're working on your deliverables, this is how they should look. You have A, the trainings hosted. The only reason that you have breakout numbers under them is because they're trainings. So for your workshops, your workshops and your trainings are going to look like this, right? So use this kind of as your template. And then you have, of course, all your your deliverable. I don't like that word bags, but that's okay. Whatever, you can put it in bags. But anyway.
It is bags. It is bags.
I know it's bags, but it's just like.
And they couldn't tell us how many.
He said it's.
No, I know. It's just
He
like.
said it's McDonald's sandwich bags.
What? Oh my gosh!
But that's okay.
Stop
But
it!
anyway, I just gotta get over that.
Stop
Get
it.
over that. I would not put my Ibi Kupuna in a bag.
Stop
Well,
it.
maybe I might put them in a Ziploc bag for a little while. Yeah.
You can get those bags and just reincur.
You just put them in Ziploc bags for a little while until you find something better. But anyway, and then the number of partners and collaborators, that is required. The CEO wants that, so that, we're going to have that, right? And so, and don't worry, we're going to go through the definitions when we go back, because I have to memorize these definitions too. I get confused, because this is all new to me. Outcomes are going to be easy, right? So primarily we are focusing, the top outcomes should always be from our strategic plan, right? So number 1 is from our strategic plan, and number 2 is from our strategic plan. And number 3 is from our strategic plan. And like I said, I'm fine with including their own outcomes, but make sure it's very relevant outcomes. Don't put rubbish kind of outcomes in there that don't matter, right? So if they're out, if they have a few outcomes that look good,
Is number 3 supposed to be empowerment or increased knowledge?
increase knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 2 is all participants. Number 3 is Native Hawaiians.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have that empower thing, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then under there you have your, it looks like a lot to you, but once you start managing your contracts, you guys are going to be so happy that this stuff is in there. Because remember, when we set up your forms, right, it's all going to be underneath. So you have those reminders underneath when you're managing the contracts, right? And then we did some revisions on the PMT report instructions and grantee PMT definitions, right? So, basically this is to let the grantee know that they're going to be completing their PMT quarterly reports. Who did the PMT quarterly reports? Was you, Emily? With you set up the form, the initial form for the quarterly reports, and we walked through that, right? When we get to the points, guys, don't worry. We're going to walk you through the PMT quarterly reports. I want to do that in the next couple of weeks with you, because you're going to have to walk your grantees through those quarterly reports too. I would wait till right before they're due to walk them through it, because if you tell them now, they're going to forget, right? And so, but Emily did that fantastical PMT report that looks really great. So right meet that PMT report, all of this information specific to your grantee will be under there. So if you try to remember, like, oh my God, what is enrolled mean? You just scroll down and you'll be able to see it under there. So the information is always there. The number one change we made is we changed the word from newly enrolled to newly served, which, so the definition, and I gotta try to memorize this, as newly served includes individuals who are enrolled, registered, or who I can't use the word, have inquired but haven't received services yet, right? And so the reason this number is important, and federal grants do this, because every time somebody contacts you and they enroll or they register, or even if you got to spend time on the phone with them, right? That requires employee time and effort. It does. And so some of your grants, the enrollment process, the intake process consumes significant amount of time, right? Your Salvation Army grant is for residential participants, Angela, is going to consume lots of time, right? So this gives the grantee credit for some type of credit for all the people that they've either enrolled, that have registered for the program, or that they had to spend time on the phone with, right? In all those inquiries. I'll tell you one, the EFA program, they spend enormous amounts of time on the phone with people. Enormous amounts of it. So this gathers the data, and so it redefines what this means, right? Newly served means anybody who's been enrolled, who have registered for a class, even though they didn't show up, inquired, right? Because you have expended your time and effort and your staff just to deal with all this stuff, right? So that's what this new definition is about. I really love it. I really love it. And so it just really encompasses all those touch points for our grantees. And of course, the newly served Native Hawaiians is the same smell, but in Native Hawaiian, right? So the Native Hawaiian numbers here are a subset of the numbers of all participants, right? So if you have non-Hawaiian participants, you're going to have like 100 newly served participants. If 50 of those are Native Hawaiians, you're going to have that number 50 under here, and that 50 number is going to be added upstairs to your participant number. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, wait, let's go back to the definition. So the numbers shall not include that have been only enrolled but have not, okay, wait a minute. These numbers shall not include that have only enrolled and not received project services. Oh, okay, so I'm wrong, that was a Carla thing. Okay, so if they enrolled, registered, and inquired and have received services, you know, but you let your grantee define what project services is, right?
Right.
So if somebody contacts me and I'm on the phone with them forever and I have to give them all this information, I would consider that the fact that I've spent hours with this person and they may not have started the program, but I would consider them receiving project services, right? So I would work with the grantee and let them define what that means, right? And you know what? All these nonprofits, they know, especially your nonprofits that have been doing the same thing. You talk to Hawaii Community Lending or Hawaiian Community Assets, they can make that determination of what they would consider project services. So if I do an intake for somebody and I spend 3 hours with them, I'm giving them project services, right? So I'm going to count them in my count. So they never show up for the initial class, but I'm going to count them. So, so in this project for Iwi Kupuna, the number of newly served participants in the project shall be documented through sign-in sheets. So it's going to be sign-in sheets for these people. And then Hawaiians, and then of course Hawaiians are the subset. Okay, I think we covered the newly served. Yeah. Okay. And like I said, you let the grantee define what they consider project services. And so I want us kind of consistent with how like state and federal tracks this number. Does anybody have any questions? I know I'm going really fast. I'm kind of like on a roll. Oh, Angela. Oh my God. Is there an accident in front of your house? Oh, they just skidded?
So I live right on the highway. So they went across the highway and back across the highway, and it was right in front of my house. And there was like a bunch of sand smoke. And so, yeah, it got me scared because it was right in front of the house.
Oh, yeah.
Like, my bedroom is like right there looking at the road.
Oh, you know more brick wall, girl. You better put on brick wall.
I'm changing, but
Oh, nah, that ain't worth nothing. You better put brick wall, girl. Oh, okay. So I'm glad they didn't get into an accident. What a dumb thing.
I just got a question about, with K. Hali.
Yeah.
Marianne is the project manager, and she kind of got in the shots for the whole grant. It's not really Scott, even though he signs the paper.
Okay.
Really. Yeah, so you know that part where it says the executive director
Oh, I
signs.
just put her on the quality assurance plan, but calling the shots and he has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, and she's probably not going to leave within the year, right? So and she can't just
The only way she's leaving is, she becomes Evie Coppola, right? That's the only way she's gonna leave.
Yeah. So that's your conversation with them. So if you have something like that, I would put her.
Okay.
I would put her because then she's the one running the show, right? So and you guys will figure that out when you're working with them. You talk a story with them, and if they tell you no way, I'm not gonna put my executive director. They barely even show up for work. All they do is go out, eat lunch. They don't do nothing. I'm the one who does all the work. My name should be there. I would put their name. It depends. I've had executive directors like that. They're MIA. They're never around, which is good. They don't bother me. I can do my job. But anyway, so yeah. It depends, right? I mean, some executive directors are hands-on. Some of them you don't see. All they do is go out to lunch and talk sorry with people. So I would put her. I mean, she would be hands-on. She would be responsible. And if get puka, she would true, right? And that's the assurance thing. You just want somebody, if get puka, they will help fill up that puka. They will make sure that it happens and it gets done, right?
Yeah, she drives it.
Yeah, at Grants, if there's a puka, Mickey and I just work on the weekends. That's all we do.
That is true.
At Grants.
Put their position, not their name, right?
No, don't put their name. Put the position.
Position.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at Grants, in puka, we just work, 60 hours a week instead of 50. And then let's see. Yeah, just ask me questions, guys, as we go along. I know I'm going real fast, but I just got out of the meeting where I was talking super fast. I used to talk like this when I lived in Los Angeles, so I don't know. I better slow down. But anyway,
I want to point out here too, Marley. So this in these boxes, right, in red font, that's where you're going to put the grant specific information for that thing, and then that information is what will follow on your P&P report once, so that they can follow along and know what means what.
yeah. And don't worry, Mickey and I are on it. When Kristen comes in with her recommendation, hopefully she does all the work for you. I mean, most of you are going to have your PMTs drafted already. By the time Kristen gets back to us, you're already going to have it drafted. And, like I told you, Angela, we just, we can draft our own and just malama your PMTs. And then we wait because when hers come in, she actually has some really good ideas, right? So we take a look at her ideas, we incorporate that stuff that looks really good. And then over here, like she may already do the job for us and include it in the bottom part. So we could just cut and paste what she put in. And so, basically it's just ways that you guys are going to track it, right?
Yeah. The number of newly serve Native Hawaiians.
Yeah.
Mickey's been informing our grantees that 70% the goal.
We try to keep that number at that.
Okay.
And you know what? I absolutely agree, because you know what? Okay, 70%. If you go below 70%, then I'm starting to have some issues, unless there's COVID, right?
Okay.
These grants have no excuse, because we are already in COVID, right? FY20 it was different, but so I would make it more reasonable, because if any grant meets that, but if they tell you no, I can meet the 80% threshold, I'm fine, right? And so, but like, try to get them like not. I mean, you wanna do 70% and above, right?
Right.
But I mean, if they can meet the 80% thresholds, I mean that's like B plus already, right?
Right.
70% is a C, and but and anything that goes above that is going to be amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we've had a couple of grantees that overdid themselves. I'm like, wow,
Okay.
you're going to have 100 people newly served, and then you said you're going to have 100 people who will complete. Like, it's very rare in any contract that you get 100 people enroll and that 100 completes, because things happen, right? Accidents, death in the family. So you want to make it more reasonable, because that's 100% threshold. I manage a lot of grants. I've never had 100% threshold, because stuff happens, right? So when you see their numbers, you go help them tweak them a little bit, because that 100% threshold is very, very difficult to meet for any contract anywhere in the world, right? And so, and a lot of them, when they're doing the applications, they're just doing it really fast. Oh yeah, I'm going to have 100 here, I'm going to do 100 there. But when you start talking to them, they're like, oh yeah, you're right. There's always going to be dropout, I mean, bring them down to 90%, even 80%. To me, a contract is still successful. If you can meet that 80%, it's still very successful. 70%, kind of wishy-washy, because you lost that 30%, right? But if you can do like an 80, if you can meet 80%, you're doing fine. If you meet 70%, you still meet the standards of, a lot with grants and contracts practices. You're still meeting compliance, but I would have them target like 80, because I mean that's, and most of them are going to do 80, 90, right? A lot of these contracts, they're ready for COVID, and so all the programs can be done with COVID. Even with the increase of variants, we can still get most of our contracts done. Yeah. So 70% is still compliant, right? And so it depends. Just work with your contractors, but just make sure that move them away from the 100%, because I've rarely ever seen it like in any contract anywhere that you can do 100%. And if they can do 100%, oh my God, that's amazing, right?
I think Ali Aloha can do 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're not Hawaiian, he tell you don't come.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then he probably just gonna harass him. Well, will you stay? Will you stay? It's supposed to be in my work time.
Yeah, discipline.
Yeah, but I still would like that 100% threshold is like it's just almost unreachable, right? If they like do 90, I'm fine with 90, but like it's hard to get. I mean, have you guys ever managed a contract where they met? Like they had 100% people enrolled and 100% people complete. No. I had never had that. Never, because we're human. Stuff happens, right? Anyway, I don't know. Did I answer that? 70% is fine, because that's compliant, right? And even if you put them at 70, most of our people they're gonna go 80, right? So I don't know. I'd rather push them higher to like 80. I'd rather push them to a higher threshold, but I don't know. You guys, you guys are working with
I
your
think it
grantees.
depends, right? It
Yeah, it
depends.
depends.
Like Calhali is a really super grassroots. They don't even know really what this workshop is. So A's might be a little unrealistic.
Is this a workshop in Hana?
Yes.
Oh, they're gonna have 100%.
That's in Hawaii.
Yeah.
That workshop
right.
should have.
Palealoha is 100%. Gotta be.
Well, the only reason that one's going to be 100% because it's targeted to a specific group of people. They're flying in and doing it on site, right? So I'm thinking that one's probably going to have, or like 95%.
Well, Marianne,
Yeah,
Marianne?
you know how many people going to go.
yeah, Marianne told us that Haleola told her only Hawaiians can participate in the workshop.
Yeah, and we have that right to discriminate, remember?
Yeah, that's what she said.
And we have that right. We do have that right to discriminate. You know, kind of cool, yeah. I mean, it's kind of cool. I mean, I never had a job where I could discriminate, but like, it's kind of cool. But yeah, so we have that right. I mean, you know, we've had that problem in the past with our In Peace program in Waianae, where people who are non-Hawaiian were like mad and telling them, how come I can't join the class? And I told them, you have the right to discriminate. You know, tell them this money that supports this and pays us is for Native Hawaiians. So if you don't have the cocoa, bye-bye. You know? So yeah. So kind of cool. And I only can say that because we are Native Hawaiian. Let's see. Where else? So did we answer all of that? Let's go through definition. So I gotta remember all these definitions. Ugh. And I think when you work with contracts and you keep reviewing with all, you guys are going to have all of these definitions memorized, right? And that flexibility threshold within the definition, you know, what would you say that, what is project services? You know, blah, if I got to spend like 3 hours with them on the application and I got to do all of this stuff, I'm providing the project services. Okay, then that's the definition that's going to be in there. Okay, so total number of time services was provided. Used to be, what was the language it used to be in the last template? Total number of
offerings.
Mickey?
Deliverables.
Yeah. So, time services were provided to individuals, and this is another one. You know, basically counting the deliverables up. And does it include anything else?
Oh, so it's just the number of times touches were provided.
Yes. Yeah. And this one we conceded, so this was a concession to evaluation, right? I mean, I'm like, is this worth me fighting on? Because this TMT would still be a draft if we were still scrapping out. So I learned in life, you know, fight the big battles and we concede to the small ones. So this was a concession on our part because evaluation really thought this was important for them when they do the final evaluations. And so, but there's flexibility in here, right? For your grantee, what would you consider? You know, the total number of time services were provided. And so I would primarily count the deliverables just to make it easy. You know, but it depends, right? So when I work with you and Angela, like this one is going to be like, okay, we're looking at this, what would we consider that, right? So this is another one, it depends, but it doesn't take a brain scientist to help figure it out. So for me, if I was a grant specialist, I would say, well, I would say it was deliverables, right? I would just count up deliverables, but it depends, right? So, you know, that's you working with your grantees. Does that make sense? Mickey, am I like on the right track?
Yeah. It really just all depends, right? Like so for Keauhali'i, they have deliverables that are not services, right? Like they're building up. So you're not gonna count those in this particular output. They're deliverables, but they're not counted in this services output.
Oh,
so it's just the number of times you serve people, basically.
Okay, now I get it. All right, see, I'm learning. Okay, So that would be workshops, training, for Angela's Salvation Army grant. It would be meeting with the resident participants, the engagement activities with the family members of those participants, and anytime that they're doing counseling, even for the children. So it would include all those touch points, right? And it's really broad, so we have a lot of flexibility in that. So just work with the grantee on what that would mean, right? Because if I was a grantee, I'd be like, wow, I'm not like gonna, every time I go call them over the phone, I'm not going to call that a touch point, okay? But these are what I'm gonna call services, right? Every time I do A, B, C, and D. And then you can say, wow, that sounds good to me. Again, of course, the same thing for Native Hawaiians. So, you know, it's broad, so you guys have some flexibility in here to work with your grantees. Any questions on that?
Okay.
I think once you guys complete a couple of them, you guys gonna rock them. You guys gonna get them. But like I said, every contract is different. Every grant, it's gonna be different for each one. And then I think the rest of it is the total number of participants who completed the project. Remember, there's going to be, your grantees are you're gonna work with your grantees. What would you consider completion, right? So Salvation Army completion, is it the family member attending 2 engagement activities is going to be completion, right? And so you work with that definition, that completion definition with your,
Okay.
oh, I'm getting sick, seasick. Okay,
Sorry.
yeah, with your grantee. Yeah. And then we put the definition in. You want to scroll back up? For this EV grant in HANA, completion is, the definition of completion is, well, that's completed trainings. Is that completed?
Third.
Okay, so for completion, it's the number of Native Hawaiian participants who completed the project shall be documented through signing sheets.
No.
Man.
There we go. Sorry.
Participants who completed the project shall be defined as individuals that completed all 3 days of EV Kupuna. So if you show up for 1 day, or Auntie Jojo show up for 2 days, but you know, she like go fishing on the 3rd day and she never come, then you cannot count Auntie Jojo as completed, right? But that's specific to this specific project, right? We have another EV Kupuna training where if you complete the one class for 1 day, that would be considered completed. But for this specific project, you know how he will make you go all 3 days because he's gonna do an intense training. So you gotta show up all 3 days, no go fishing on the 3rd day, and then you will be considered completed. So this is something, you know, we work, you know, we can look at their application and come up with definitions, but when you meet with your grantees, you know, what do you consider completed? Residential participants for Salvation Army, what would you consider completed, right? For their family members and engagement activities, what is going to be considered completed? And then we allow them to count those numbers, right? And that's why I think the definitions are really important for us and for them, just reminders. Any questions on that?
Do we have to make notations as far as what we are considering completed?
No, this is all in their contract, and then this, all this is underneath the PMTs that they are completing.
Okay.
So you know that PMT that was developed by Emily, that we're going to be doing every quarter, and that you're going to be reviewing. This is like under it, so you can scroll down because you forget, right? I mean, you're managing a lot of contracts, so they can scroll down, and you can scroll down just to remind yourself what is considered completed, right? So all the information is right up front. I mean, it makes the form long, but I like the fact that you don't have to go look I don't want them to have to go. You go look in the contract. They go look in the contract. Just everything is right up front. Yeah. So you scroll down when you're looking at their quarterlies and scroll back up. Okay. You know. And then what else? Number of deliverables. That's easy. I think we took number of completed deliverables out. We took it out.
I think that's just a general because it looks
general.
like this
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Deliverable A.
Okay. And then of course, it's all your deliverables identified, right? So it's really clean and clear. What are the deliverables? And
the total number and then number of clients.
Yeah. Is that the end? No.
No.
Okay. And then putting all your deliverables underneath. So I know there's repetition, but sometimes repetition is good, right? And so and then it shows how you're going to be providing the support documentation. You have the support documentation from SHPTA here. And then the completed trainings are via sign-in sheets. The Native Hawaiian ancestry, of course, is the self-declaration on the sign-in sheets. Really easy. And then the outcomes. Oh, yeah, the partners and collaborators, right? We went back and forth on this, on this. And my thing is, a partner or collaborator is somebody who is actually doing something for your project. So if they're dropping off flyers somewhere for somebody, to put so people can pick up when they come into the office, I really wouldn't call that a partner or collaborator. But if you're dropping off flyers and they're actually handing it out to people who come in the door, I would consider that person a partner because they're actively engaged and supporting your project, right? So this one is a common sense one. I don't think you need a PhD or an astronomy degree like Ahia to figure it out. But so it's just a common sense one. I mean, somebody who actually is providing real support for your project. So if they're actually
that doesn't count contractors, right?
No, because you paid them. Yeah, I wouldn't. Contractors are not partners and collaborators, and so a lot of partners are like, for example, help you. They help you recruit, so they take your email and stuff and they forward it to all their clients. I would call somebody like that a partner and collaborator because they're actually actively engaged in helping you bring people into your program. Yeah. So this one is common sense. You guys got questions on this? Yeah. And
Well, I do because SLK, saving the language on KOI, is engaging another nonprofit to help them, but they're also paying them. So are they a contractor or a collaborator?
That one is a real.
Because they're using them for recruitment.
You know what? Okay. So in that case, ex-nay what I said, right? Because that's a true partner. You're paying them, right? And then in their narrative, they're partners, but we're paying them to be partners. If they're helping with recruitment and getting paid for it. So ex-nay what I said regarding getting paid, because in that case they are a partner and collaborator, even though they get paid for it, right? So it just depends.
Yeah.
But if you have a subcontractor who is just doing contractor type of work, I wouldn't call them a partner, right? It depends on the situation. In that situation, I would consider them a partner because they're doing active recruitment.
Yeah, with Keao Hali in Hana, the contractor is building the ahu.
I wouldn't consider that one a partner or collaborator.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So it depends.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Right? In his first example, that subcontractor is actively engaged in recruitment, In the second one, the person is only contracted to build the ahu.
So not really collaborating. They're just
not partnering, not collaborating. They're just doing a specific subcontractor service, right? And so, even if I'm paid to do the workshops, if you're paying me as a subcontractor to do the workshops, I'm not a partner collaborator. I wouldn't be doing this unless you were paying me, really, right? So it just depends, right? But I think if they're engaged in real active recruitment, you could consider them a partner even though you're paying them, right?
Yeah. With Halealoi, he didn't really ask him for money. Marianne just offered him money. So I think he's a collaborator.
Yeah.
But
Well,
he's okay.
well, if he's getting paid, I wouldn't call him a partner collaborator. If he's getting paid to do the workshop, to be honest with you,
Okay.
you know.
But he's
So-
also recruited people to be in the workshop, right? So
Okay, well that could be partner collaborator, yeah, because he actively recruited people. I know I bummed. I wanted to go to Hana. I would just fly in and out, but I would love to go to one of those things. That's this weekend, or they
Yeah.
call.
Friday.
Tomorrow.
Wow. I don't know. Then I would have to camp with Holly Aloha and all of them guys.
Yep. In the backyard.
Oh my God, that was so much fun. Oh, guys, we got to do this. We got to do something like that. As soon as our travel restrictions are lifted, we're going to do something as a team. We got to visit some of our projects. Question. Number of times services were provided to Native Hawaiians participants. Okay, I gotta see them. Angela, you just want to ask your question?
So I was just wondering because they're serving 35 people, but there's services, there's multiple services. This is just a couple out of the 6 or 7 services they're providing within 3 months. Do I break them out? Like this I'm just calculating just with one person. So one person would have 12 services for that one thing, for the vocational training, but then they also have group sessions. They also have individual sessions, and then they have all these different services that they attend either once a week, 3 times a week, 4 times. So do I calculate the total amount of services times 35? To incorporate these services. That means I have to break everything out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And that's why I was scrapping Carla on this number, because I know I've never seen it in federal tracking information, right? And so, I don't see anywhere else that they do this. And so I think you need to go talk to I think you probably would have to add it all up, right?
Okay.
I mean, it's just a lot. Or, I don't know, talk to the grantees. You have a group session 3 times a week, 4 hours each. And so are they mandated to do all the group sessions?
Right. I'm pretty sure it's a 3-month program, so they do have everybody scheduled out, but because they're recovering, in recovery doesn't mean that they'll make it all the time.
So I would count the group session rather than the three times a week. I mean, wait, the group sessions 3 times a week. What is that? 30.
Yeah, so that would be 36 group counseling for that one person. Then I would multiply that 36 by 35 people who would be part of the group session. That's the thing that I'm trying to add in my head.
So are they mandated to show up 3 times a week, or if they show up to one of the group sessions, is that good enough for the grantee, right?
Well, it's their time frame and what they're supposed to do. That's how their program is set up.
Yeah.
It's, I guess, research based.
Well, if you look at total number of times services are provided, in this case, it would be any time that they show up for a group session, right? And that would be in the sign-in sheets anyway, right? Or do they have to sign in? Well, they would have to sign in for each session in order to.
Angela, does each person need to attend all 3 of those things in order to complete the program?
It's part of their activity and the time frame of 3 months. And this is just only 2 things that I listed, because they also have to do their 1 hour individual session. And they also have to do another one for another wellness group. And then there's actually 3 more things because they have like peer specialists and then there's just a bunch of activities.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just to help that individual to stay focused and committed.
So I don't know. I'm thinking in case you wouldn't even have to break any of this down in your PMP. It would just be the program. How many of individuals completed the program, right?
Mhm.
Right, Maya? I mean, Em, I see you shaking your head.
I mean, if I'm looking at deliverable, because you don't want to
The
make it.
impact is based on them completing all of that. That's not
And so completion is considered. I attended like a few group sessions. I completed my individual session, and that's all. Like, and yeah. And what you could do is under that you could put, completion includes all of this, right? At least 2 group sessions, at least the individual session, at least this. So what you can do is have like the number of mandated touch points in order to consider this person completed. And then what I would say is when they tell you somebody is completed, you can say that this number of touch points at minimum work, right? So that's what I would do rather than, I'm going to tell you some of our grantees are going to go, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm going to check up and report all this stuff. So what I would do is say, okay, what would you consider completed, right? So they would tell you if they attend, if they attend 4 sessions, they attend their individual session, and they do this, I would mark they are going to be considered completed. So when you see my number completed, at minimum they completed this threshold, and that's what I would use. I would say a person who's completed has done this, this, and this. That's this number of touch points. That's 12 touch points. And then what you can do is whenever you have somebody completed, you can say, oh, completed means 12. You put the number up. And it'll just be easier for you, and it's easier for actually for the grantee, because then they don't have to look and do all these check boxes. Okay, session, class. They don't have to go look at our attendance sheets and all this stuff. If they can tell you that this person completed, in order to be considered completed, they attended 3 sessions, 1 individual workshop, that's 4 minimum to be completed. So as soon as you see the completed number, and you can tell them completed means 4, and whenever you have 1 person completed, you put that 4 up in times. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
that's the easiest way to do it.
So I was
Right.
thinking of like hours, completed, but
Yeah.
it's even easier if you just say sessions.
Because if you're managing, you got to understand, a lot of our grantees are managing this grant, 2 federal grants, and a state grant, right? So all that reporting coming in, and this shit is burdensome. And this is why I kind of was scrapping out with them on it, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen this in my life. I managed like federal grants. I never had to do touch points. But if we can make it easy, right? So if you can say completed means that they got this number of services, then you have a number of touch points, a minimum number of touch points. So every time you have 1 completed person, that is 4 touch points. That 4 times can go up to the top square.
Okay.
We'll make it easy. That'll make it easier for our grantees, right? And even for you, because you could say, hey, 3 people who completed, so this number should actually be 12, so let's revise it, right? That means they completed at least 4 classes and an individual session. So then you as a specialist know each completed person is 4 times. You have to do 4 of these or 2 of these. The workshops, you only have to do 1, right? And that way you have a standard definition for you. So you can even help them. So if they have 3 people who completed and their number is wrong, you can say, hey, let's revise this because you have 3 completed people. At minimum, they did 12. This number 4. So your number of times completed for your Native Hawaiian should be actually you had 12 minimum touch points. That way, we're not driving them crazy. Because they're gonna go crazy. Because then they're gonna have to go through all their sign-in sheets, all
Right.
their it's gonna be a mess. And I don't want them to feel that our OHA grants are more burdensome to report on than their federal grants, and we shouldn't be. And that's why I had an issue with this. But if we can make it easier for them and easier for you, right? So for this one, we asked them what the minimum is, right? They're going to be with you for a duration of 3 months. What would you consider completed? And they're going to say, well, if they come to 3 classes and they finish their individual session, they're good. Or they may be hardcore. They have to come to 36 classes and their session, so that's 37. So then you have 37, right? So whenever you have the number of 1 person completed, that person did the total number of time services was 37. But go make them easy for them. Right?
So I know that they have a database and they keep all their information in there with demographic. I'm pretty sure at the end of the day they give it to their data specialist to input who attended and who didn't, and they can pull it from there.
Yeah.
And it's in their application that they say they keep information in there, so I can ask them, and then they
burden it, right? So if you know what completed means, then you already have a minimum number. Right? And because not all of our grantees have databases, there's some organizations, there's so 1972, like the grantee I had who kept the receipts in a paper bag, but the receipts were correct, but there was in a paper bag. And that's my beach community. So, it's like what we're trying to do is create something that is very structured and simple, not where you have to pull spreadsheet from that database and do. What you want them to do is say, what do you consider completed? Because then I know the minimum number of touch points, right? So if completed is 37 classes and 1 individual session, that's 30. You already know it's 37 times that this person has that services was provided. So it's going to make it easier for you too as a monitor, right? Because you have this standard. They may have done more, but in order to be considered completed, you have to do this number of times services were provided, right? So I think it's easier. Nobody has to go pull spreadsheet, database. I mean, they already know this person's completed because they did this, they did this, they did this, they did this. You're managing multiple contracts. You shouldn't have to pull and look. But when you do your source documentation support, that's something you may want to pull, right? So I'm just verifying, I'm pulling a sampling of your people who have completed. I want to take a look at their files, and I just want to look at the support documentation just to show that they completed, right? The number of classes and that they did their individual sessions, right? But it's so does that make sense? It makes it easier for you, it makes it easier for them. And we get the data, right? We get the data. I mean, if you say they should have these services, they need to do all these services and to be considered completed, right? The problem is for the people who are not completed, right? Tracking the number of services they were provided, right? How are we going to do that?
Yeah, so that's what I'm looking at. Number 4, the services provided. The completed, I can ask them what it's completed, but it's the number of services completed.
Yeah. So I think this one,
it's one workshop.
have them have a standard set of for your people who are completed. Then ask them how are they going to track the total amount of services are provided for people who have not completed, right? Because that way for your people who are completed, you have standard number of services that are being provided, right? It makes it really easy. But for all those people who are not completed, I think that's where you got to talk to them. So how the case in point that you're talking about may be easy because they have a database, right? But some of these guys, they just don't count people on sign-in sheets, right? So even for people who are not completed, I'm just going to count, every time I have a class, I'm just going to count 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, and I'm going to put that number in, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
can I ask a question? Some of the EV Kupuna groups have work days. Those aren't, they don't teach them, they teach them stuff there, but they're working. So that would be considered services, right?
I don't know. I mean, it's up to, it depends, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
because they're gonna do the sign-in sheets and
yeah. And so you can count that as services. Talk to your grantee, because if you count that as services, it has to be included in here. And if you have the sign-in sheets for those people coming and doing those work days, you can include that in there,
okay.
right? And so I think those sign-in sheets are really important. But you know, when you start moving to individual sessions, individual counseling, you know, all of those things where they got to track all of that. If you know, we only have 35 coins, it shouldn't be hard to track, right? If you have more than that, it gets, you know, if you do individual kinds of services, it's harder to track, you know. But the kinds of where we have sign-in sheets for workshops, training, classes, volunteer work, and all those other things, I mean, I think it's going to be easier to track. I think it just depends, right, Angela? And who's that? That's not Kohala, is it?
No. It's Big Island Substance Abuse Council. So I think it's it's a 3-month program that they've stayed in.
Oh, okay. For them, they know how to, they'll do it. They'll tell you
Yeah.
how to track it. Yeah, that one's gonna be easy because they do it all the time. You know,
Yeah.
because they're like a couple of miles away from me in KL.
Oh.
And so they do it all the time, and they do it for their federal. They have like federal grants. So yeah, for them it's not gonna be easy. They'll tell you how they're gonna do it. Yeah, and they
Are
have.
they in like a building like number 217? Like, because they have 2 different addresses. I don't know. One of them, I guess, is the inpatient or outpatient, and one is like the office. There's an office, and then there's a building where they do treatment program.
Might have moved into a new building over there, so you know, maybe they keep their offices separate from their treatment offices, which is very smart to do, because sometimes when you're in treatment you have clients coming in that have like severe issues, and there's incidents and stuff, and you want your administrative office separate. And that's why Catholic Charities in Kalihi had problems all the time, because our staff got like, there was almost like a lockdown. 2 of our staff members were in there doing a site visit, and then because they don't have things separate, one of their clients came in and was like totally off the wall violent, and Edna and Jason kind of were in a lockdown in the office for a little while until they dealt with the client outside in the reception area.
Yikes.
So I think maybe that's why they have administrative offices and treatment separate, because if you have issues, a lot of times you have police officers with who want to serve your clients coming in, and you don't want them coming into your administrative offices, right? It used to happen to me all the time, coming up to our door and wanting to serve my clients, and I would tell them, hell no, get the hell off my property. We'll serve them at their house, you know. But I think that's why they have 2 separate, because when you're dealing with a high-risk population, it and somebody starts going berserkle, right? Like it is hard to work. You remember that, Mickey? We had one lockdown, Jason and Edna.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were doing like a site visit, going through files, and it was kind of like a lockdown for a little while until they got this guy under control. But that's why I think they separate their offices. They have 2 separate offices. But anyway, yeah, for them, for Big Island Substance Abuse, this one will be easy.
Okay.
Because they do it for their feds, and because I think because they charge off their state and federal money, they charge them, you know, for their time and effort for all the clients. So that's why they have those intense tracking. Some of other people may not have it, but you know what? We can work with them. You know, we work with them. You know, not everybody has database and get federal funding. So, but you know, we'll work with them. Most of them is going to be sign-in sheets, right? But it depends. I don't know. We got all kinds of grants going in the community. Like everything is new. So, yeah, it depends. So that one, I think they got them. Angela, yeah. Any more questions on this one? And you know what? Every time you get another contract, you're gonna be like, oh, this one's a new one.
Right.
And I see it all the time. I mean, sometimes I encounter stuff. I'm like, God, I've never seen something like that before. So, and you know, we can do it. We can work with and get these numbers. Okay, number of times services are provided to Native Hawaiians. What else? Do we have any other newbies? Everything is pretty much the same. Completed the project, right? So completion is, everybody has their different definitions of completion. And like I said, for Salvation Army, you're going to have different completion thresholds, one for your residential patients and one for your the children that they're servicing, and another threshold for the families that they're servicing. You know, what their definitions of completion are going to be. Okay, and I think everything else is, and there's your partners. I think everything else is self-explanatory, right? And you know, participant surveys are going to be needed because that's the only way you're going to get the data for your outcomes, right? So if you have participants like me, don't let me leave until I finish the survey, because I usually run out. I'm like, I'm out the door, right? And then you don't get your data off of me for your outcomes. So, you know, for them, that you just got to tell them, make sure you don't let you got to get those surveys and have them completed, because that's the only way, pretty much the only way we're going to get our data for our outcomes is through those surveys and questionnaires. We are very dependent on the participants, right? And it's the participant who decides, hey, like, I'm going to say if this empowered me, you know, I think we went back and forth with them because they wanted to put a definition again on empowerment. I'm like, you can't tell a Native Hawaiian, especially a Native Hawaiian participant, you can't define empowerment for them. I actually would be pissed if I saw someone. I'm like, how dare you define empowerment for me? That's very westernized, right? If I participate in an EV component class and I have a survey that says, do you feel, after participating in this workshop, do you feel empowered, you know, empowered to
take care of EV Kupuna.
Yeah. Do you feel empowered to take care of EV Kupuna, right? And so I told Carla, you cannot define that word empowered for Native Hawaiians, right? I mean, we have internally our own core. Like, empowered to me might be different from what empowered means to Strata. So that's why you have the participant surveys, right? You don't tell a Hawaiian, oh, here's the definition of what empowerment means, right? And so, because I'd be like, well, how dare you tell me what empowerment means? I'm young. So, and that's why those surveys are really important. Do you feel empowered? Do you like your knowledge has been increased, right? And they wanted to make definitions from that. You can't make a definition for that, right? If somebody feels like they their knowledge has been increased, they're going to check that box, right? And so those things cannot be defined for participants, and that's why we tell them, you got to make sure you catch it. People, if my little Hawaii is in your class, don't let her leave until she finishes the survey, because she books it out the door like as soon as the class is paused, she's gone, right? So a way to do it is to say, oh, okay, you can have Auntie, you can have take one of those things after you complete the survey. So if you guys have been to conferences, they give you something, right? So I finished the survey because I like something free, right? You know, it can be a mango, I'll take it. So anyway, all those PMT measurements, questionnaires, very important to get those outcomes. The stories and testimonials, I mean, if they want to do it, they can. Recordings, the problems with recordings is we will not, we can watch the recordings, but it's not something that we archive for ourselves, right? There were projects that I went to where they showed me recordings. I loved it. I mean, they did video stuff. I could actually see what they were doing on site, much more powerful than what they're doing than paper, right? I actually watch it and I just check off that. When I did the site visit, I did this and that, and we did this and that. So, a lot of those, if they have young people, they like to do those. They like to take their cell phones and do the recordings and share that with you, which is something. But it's up to them, right? It also can be done in narrative form. And then, so these are all the things for this specific contract. They're going to have participant surveys, sign-in sheets. That's why it's in red. For this contract, they're also going to have an approved site plan. They're going to have a special management area exemption from the County of Maui Department of Planning, and they're also going to have a right of entry agreement for the landowner. And these are very critical for the success of this specific EV Kupuna grant in Hana. Because if they don't get the SMA, if they don't get the right of entry and the site plan, they're actually pretty screwed on this contract. So, and that's why we have it in there. I mean, those are mandatory things that we need from our Hana people. Yep. And then everything else is basic, and then we regurgitate the definitions again. And so if you don't know what a Native Hawaiian is, go look at the definition. And so, and then we have the budget. So Valzi did an excellent job. Valzi, thank you. I really love what you did. The summary of costs was super awesome. And then setting us up with a template for the budget detail, super awesome. Super awesome. And then the rest of it is, all the basic attachments, right, that we put in.
So, Marnie, I noticed that the footnotes in the PMT didn't transfer over
To the contract?
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Because the footnotes are just a repetition, aren't they?
The glossary.
The definitions. Yeah. I really don't want the footnotes in our contracts.
Okay, I'm gonna remove those numbers.
Yeah. And so it just kind of creates some confusion. But we'll keep them in the PMT forms that they're going to be completing. Evaluation in there, they wanted to make it easy so they could just scroll down, And so, but for the contracts, that's not necessary because it's those definitions are provided at the end in the glossary. So we're just kind of just repeating.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird to have footnotes in contract. Like, you don't put footnotes in contract. Yeah. So that's fine. You guys have any questions on that? I know it's a lot, but you guys are going to be experts. Like in a couple of months, you guys are going to be contract experts. You're going to be able to put it on your resume, right? And seriously. I mean, you're drafting contracts from front to back. So you not only are drafting, you're executing and you're managing. You're implementing and you're managing and monitoring. So that's a really good resume thing. But you just got to really do a bunch of them just to develop that expertise. And I'm learning too. I mean, what we're doing with the definitions are really new to me. And so I think we're good. Do you guys have any questions? I know it's a lot to consume. Consumption.
I'm having go ahead,
Yeah.
Shraddha, go ahead.
For outcomes, it's empowerment, increased knowledge, and community.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
That's for easy people
That's
know.
for easy.
Other grant types might be different, right?
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the health outcomes look a little bit different.
Okay.
Education looks a little bit different. It just depends.
Okay.
It depends, yeah. And so, here you had a question?
Yeah, I am in, I have a grantee Kulanya Kia that is redefining how Hawaiian language fluency is measured. And so
oh my God, we were
it's-
just talking about that.
Were you?
Yeah, with the ANA grant right before this meeting,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Because that is going to be one of the outcomes. And so I told Carla, go talk to some of our people in the schools.
Yeah.
You know? Because research, Lisa Watkins Victorino says, no. And I said, no, there is a definition of what fluency is.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And so for those specific contracts, it should be an outcome.
Right.
Right? And so for this program, they're working on that. They have
Yes.
a measurement already.
Yes. So I guess traditionally and in Western linguistics, when we're measuring fluency, we're measuring number of words, how often, what situations they're speaking languages in. However, in a revitalization language like Hawaiian, we have to come at it not from we were fluent and now we are maintaining that. We're coming at it from we lost our language and these are all of the pukas. And so their focus is in protocols. So this program is focusing on infant and toddler programs. But so we can measure, I need to find out from them how they're measuring their language success. But with infants and toddlers, you put them in the immersion program, we're good. But the secondary population are the families. And so you have families, who are fluent and families who are not. And so they're measuring language with respect to protocols. The songs you sing, the place names you use, the communities that you're a part of. And so in this, I need to meet with them to discuss. They're also requiring their families to go out into the communities that have Hawaiian language and participate. And so they're going to get language in the program, language with support services from the program, but also have a requirement to go out into the community and use it twice a month. And so
So one of their outcomes, they're going to have a fluency outcome.
Right. And an increased fluency
You know
outcome.
how you know somebody is fluent? You put them with a bunch of Hawaiians who can speak Hawaiian.
Yeah.
And then they start talking to a person and you don't respond.
Yes. And they have all these little
You don't
measurements.
understand what they're saying to you, like,
No, for real.
I mean, you should understand, right?
Right.
I mean, but I guess it depends.
Well, and so trying to track the families and ohana and multi-generational impact that they have is going to be interesting because they're sort of a secondary.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah. I love it. Ooh,
Super
I'm
cool.
excited about that.
I definitely need to meet
So
with them.
I'd be interested to see. Well, I think what's her name? Lisa Watkins Victorino is going to be in contact. What's that boy's name? Have his face tattooed.
Oh, yes.
Mouth.
Yep.
He married to the crime Duplo.
Yep. Kaleikoa. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm like, because I'm sure they have already created some non-Western kinds of standards.
Yes.
Because it's a big
Yes.
question in the community.
Yes.
Right? And so once they get that from him, I'll actually just give it to you. You might want to
Please.
share it with them because then they don't have to do a lot of work.
That'd be
It's already
amazing.
done. So I'll tell Lisa Watkins Victorino if she has those fluency kinds of
Measurements.
measurements, then if she can. Well, I got to look at it anyway because apparently we're going to be managing soliciting and managing this grant anyway.
Yeah.
But I'll share it with you so you can share it with them. So you know
Yeah.
it helps
Mahalo.
reduce like the work and time that to figure it out.
Mahalo, my kai.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. We got a lot going on. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing at the staff meeting next week, but the week after, I moved our SOP to the week after. And that way I can get this SOP completed and to Carla and Nikki for their detailed review. And we have it for like at least 2 weeks. And then we can give you and sit down and kind of walk you guys through it. And so, you know, grants changes so much, like every 6 months, like new stuff happens where I feel like I have to change. And that's why I'm trying to anticipate. You'll see, like, I'm anticipating things that may come to us. And I'm already going to have policies and procedures for those anticipated types of program. Something interesting with CEO, we may be doing a solicitation next year. She told me she was like $750,000. I'm like, where's the money? It means more contracts, more employees. So I'm probably going to be asking for 2 more employees for fiscal year 23, because not only are we going to be managing this federal pass-through, which is $250,000, but she's looking at it too. And okay, I apologize. It was kind of my idea. I didn't realize she's going to put that much money in it. $750,000 for a grant specifically for our artistic community, right? Our artistic community. So our artistic community that is engaged in filmmaking, right? Our artistic community who are actually artists. I belong to a group of Native Hawaiians. We have Native Hawaiian only art shows, right? With Nelson Makua. And so, and don't worry, it's not for me because I haven't participated. I'm too busy to participate in that stuff. But also for Native Hawaiian designers. I don't know if you saw that one of our designers, for the first time, a Native Hawaiian actually was invited by Runway 7 to bring his work to New York. I mean, we've had Native Hawaiian designers go to that show, but they weren't invited. They actually asked to come. And so that Native Hawaiian designer has to raise $100,000 to go and do this in September. He already raised $40,000. And he's, doing a GoFundMe, right? The problem is a lot of these designers and artists are for-profit, right? They're not non-profit, right? They don't comply with our ARS 10-17. So I really don't want to fund the for-profit entities, but I want to fund the non-profit. The tribes do it all the time. They fund artistic kinds of ventures that are non-profit,
right?
So it could be like a gathering of Native Hawaiian musicians, right? We do sponsorships right now for Mary Monarch and for our Prince Lot Hula Festival. It might be similar, right? So I got to use my left brain. I'm not going to do it until I finish the community grant solicitation and I have our master schedule set up for all our current FY23 grants, because we got to get all those out the door. This is a solicitation that will be going out for FY23, so it's going to be a new solicitation in 12 months. And so, but it's really interesting. But I'm like, where'd you get the $750,000? I actually have no clue how much so next year our budget is probably going to increase by another $1 million, people. And so anyway, and more staff. So things are happening, a lot is going on. Every time they want to do something, they turn to grants. So it feels wonderful that they have confidence in our work, and it feels horrible that we're getting more work. So it's like, you know, you're like, it's good, but it's bad. It's good, but it's bad. And so, anyway, but thank you for all of your work. I really appreciate it. Emily, thank you for working on the PMT form. Dowsy, thank you for working on the budgets and the expenditure reports and, you know, helping us upgrade our contract templates. I mean, you know, that are going out the door this year, and I'm really happy. I mean, our contracts look better than last year. Our PMTs look better than that last year. You know, I thanked, you know, Carla them because even though their little irritating hands were in it, it turned out positive. And we're not always going to agree how that's going to look because they're not the ones having to do all the work and do all the data collection. We do. I mean, it's on us, right? It's easy to tell people what to do but you know, we're the one who has to sweat and work it. But you know, it's been really awesome collaboratively, and so I'm going to be forced to collaborate with other people against my will, and so, but it's fine. So they're creating a whole new direct beneficiary services division. It looks like we're going to be doing a lot of the work. And so I'm going to have to sit in and kind of negotiate and stand my ground on a whole bunch of stuff. I didn't come to OHA to do, I came to OHA to do grants. I didn't come to OHA to do direct services, right? If you guys all have worked in nonprofit, you know how much work direct services is. It's horrifying. That's why we contracted out, right? And so I really don't want to be involved in it. I keep on, you know, so, and I'll provide advice. I don't mind training people, but I don't want my grants people involved in direct services because it's just overwhelming. There's no way we can manage contracts and grants and be involved in direct services. So I'll be meeting with administration and we'll work it out. We always do. So it's all good. Anywho, it's lunchtime, everybody. Angela, I didn't look at your stuff yet, but I'm going to do it today. Dowsy, I'll take a look at yours too. I'm going to be working, you know, doing my little edits and recommendations. And Mickey, you're on vacation on Monday, right? Mickey?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anybody else on vacation? I'm going to be on vacation for a week in September. From September 11th, 14th, the week of the 14th, I'm gone. I'm going to DC, meeting with our congressional people and with the Department of Interior, with the Sovereign Council for Hawaiian homesteads. We have federal regs we're pushing that we want to get in on the federal level. And I'm looking for $1 million because I got to build a thing for my community. Anyway, it's all good, people. You guys are doing awesome work. I'm so impressed. A lot of the things that I see, man, like you guys are contract experts. You're awesome. So, I mean, I think we've all come a long way. Yeah. Anything else? Carlin, you got anything you want to say regarding the
too?
Huh?
I'm on vacation in August.
Okay. Yeah. Finally, Carlin gets to go on vacation, and so I'll put it on my calendar. But if you guys can just make note, and then I'll let you guys know the one-on-ones. I won't have one-on-ones that week, and so it's a vacation, but it's work for me. It's community work, which is a good thing. And so, anything else going on, Emily? Your PhD going good? We are going to be recruiting next month for our grant supervisors and 2 grant supervisors and I think 2 grant specialists or 3. I don't know. I can't remember. And so I asked if we could expedite the grants officers ones, but they're still moving slow. And so, but all those positions will be out there. So I believe he is going to be applying for
Yes, please.
a permanent position so she could actually get benefits.
Thanks.
You know, doing the same work but then getting benefits. Isn't that nice?
That'd be awesome.
Stratherwalt, he's going to be our 89-day hire forever because I guess you lose your retirement benefits if you work for us, right? So you're just going to be always an 89-day hire. And so there's opportunities across our organization, but don't go work for anybody else right now. I didn't train you for nothing. Don't go. And you know what? If you talk to everybody, I mean, you may not think I'm nice, but if you really talk to anybody in the organization, I am the nicest manager at OHA.
Yes.
And I'm actually probably one of the few managers, me and Aikui and Alice, who actually are hands-on with our staff and we work, right? And so, and Kai Markel too, he works. And so, but anyway, you know, please don't leave me and go another division, taking all your expertise. But you know what? If you see an opportunity that you like, and it's aligned with what you would consider your career pathway, I would support you to go. You know, I don't want you to go, but if it's part of your career pathway to go somewhere else, then go. I'm still mad at Aikui. I'm still mad at him for leaving, but you know what? He came, he got trained, and then now he's a manager at OHA, right? Wow. He's managing a whole division, so I'm very supportive of it. I'm not happy about it, but you know, I was one of his biggest cheerleaders, even though I still give him shit. So anyway, so if you see some place that's part of your career pathway, I do support you going because that's what you need to do for you. Okay. All right, y'all. Have a nice weekend. I'm going to see a bunch of you tomorrow, one-on-ones for your performance evaluations. Other than that, everybody have a marvelous weekend. Have a great weekend. Mahalo for all the work that you do. We need each and every one of you, and we depend on you. So thank you so much. Mahalo, everybody. Have a great weekend. Ohoiho. Go to lunch. Bye.